And joining us in studio is Michael Bongani Reinders from the University of Pretoria. He's an SRC member there. Dirk Smith is Director for Ekurhuleni Shooting Training Academy. And Kyle Condon, owner of DNK Management Consultants Global Bodyguard Solutions. And Lieutenant Colonel Lungelo Dlamini from the Gauteng SAPS. He's the spokesperson there. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. You at home are most welcome to give us a call 011-542-2186 or tweet at 8N7 TV. Let's just start with you, Bongani. In terms of the security protocol on campuses generally, when there are disputes, does the management invite the police or do they come as per instruction, depending on the level of disruption there?
I think it depends specifically on where the disruption is happening. When it is on the campus itself, usually the engagement begins with either the university security or private security, and then the management would then invite police onto the campus. However, generally when campuses are shut down and there's protesting outside of the campuses, then it's usually within the police's jurisdiction.
Yeah, but the presence of police in itself can be seen as something that is antagonistic, that could incite violence. Carl, I mean, that environment is supposed to be safe. It's an environment of learning. When there are disputes, you'd expect that management would rather engage and empower students on what the way forward is. Do you think the presence of police and security personnel is necessary on campus?
Cindy, I think one needs to look at the context of what the protest action is about, whether it be students in this particular example or whether it be strikes in the industrial sector or the mining sector. We've got a history, and South Africa does unfortunately have a history of protest action boiling over into violent conflict. Now, it's very difficult for the SAPS as well as private security to be called in to maintain some form of law and order, but at the same time allow the protesters to voice their opinion and to do their picketing. The problem comes into it is when universities, in this particular case, and even private companies during strikes, don't foresee what is going to happen, and therefore the lack of planning takes place. And that is where you get a knee-jerk reaction. Police are suddenly deployed at the last minute. Security, and a lot of the times untrained, unfortunately, is deployed at the last minute. And as a result of that, what you then get is a very unstructured form of protest action where you have got a volatile situation made worse by the fact that you are going to get those who antagonize the police, those who are going to antagonize security, and then within the security sector and the police sector, those who aren't qualified or trained to handle it. And at the end of the day, that is where the problem lies. The planning wasn't done beforehand.
Yeah, but what is the training then when it comes to managing a firearm? But because we've seen visuals where police had pointed their weapons directly at students, and I don't know if the riot police are trained differently from what the gun laws are when dealing with protesters.
Cindy, yes, gun laws apply the same. You see, the police have to do everything within the legal framework. There must be a legal framework. There must be, in other words, a law that gives them the authority. If they're going to point a firearm at somebody, there must be a law that gives them that authority. Otherwise, they are acting illegal. And the same with the security officers. Everything must be within the legal framework. Otherwise, they are acting illegal. And I mean, there must be some sort of ground of justification. How they're going to justify if they have to been taken to a court of law, how they justify, what law they're going to use then to justify their actions. All
right, we also have on the line via Skype Dr. Johan Burger. He's the Senior Researcher for Crime and Justice Program at the Institute for Security Studies. Dr. Burger, thanks so much for your time. Do you think that the presence of police and private security fuels the violence in this volatile fees must fall protests?
Well, good evening, Cindy and your other guests. I think it would be a very simplistic statement to make that the presence of the police and private security are inciting violence. I think the counter question would be, if it wasn't for the police, private security, what levels of violence might we have not seen so far? We've had so many incidents of extreme violence, the use of bombs, for example, setting buildings and vehicles alight at campuses. And if the police were not involved, the police did not intervene, who knows where this violence could have gone. So I think ideally the idea is the police presence should not only prevent this kind of violence from happening. But it should also teach police to act professionally as they should. It should lead to a situation where the police bring stability and calmness to the situation. Unfortunately, there were far too many instances where there's evidence where the police themselves have unfortunately acted beyond acceptable levels of violence, and by doing so, perhaps may have contributed to violence where otherwise they shouldn't or wouldn't have.
All right, we apologize for Dr. Berger's line and not very clear. We'll try and re-establish that connection. Sam, you're calling us in Pretoria. Hello to you. Hi, Sam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we're listening. What's your question or comment?
Yes, hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm also, thank you. What's your comment or question?
Well, you see, I just want to make something to the gentlemen, all of them sitting on the panel there, that when the police are acting as the protective organ of the society, they are blamed. When the structures of the varsity or of the government or wherever they are bent down, I'll give an example, the one in Vuwane. The schools were bent down. Are you saying, you guys, the police must fold their hands when the property is being destroyed? Or are we saying they are too harsh? Because I understand there was another interview from one of the AN7 journalists who was interviewing the guy, I think it's a lady or from the police, who was saying, you only concentrate on the public side, but you don't concentrate on the harassment that is faced by the police. You know, one of you one day must get into one of these cars or this, what do we call it, I think a police flying squad or something, and just work there one night on Friday.
Sam, are you in law enforcement yourself?
Come again?
Are you in law enforcement? Are you a policeman?
No, I'm working on the traffic side.
Oh, all right, but I'm just saying that indiscriminate level of violence that we've seen, though, and notwithstanding the stressful conditions under which police work, there surely needs to be a different treatment as to how you deal with protesters who are unarmed, who don't pose any danger, as opposed to shooting live ammunition and victimizing students.
I think.
All right, we've lost Sam there, but is that your experience, Bongane, or do you prefer Michael or Bongane, by the way? Either or. We'll go with Bongane. I like that better.
Can you just clarify the question then?
Yeah, I'm just saying that the indiscriminate level of force that is sometimes exerted on students, do you think that is justified? But before we go there, we have Eric on the line. Hi, Eric.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes, what's your question or comment?
My comment, ma'am, is the violence happening in the university.
Yes, Eric.
The violence happening in the university is not a new thing. The problem we have in our led government, the organization in the government, they only consider what is in the dish without looking what it makes the people to get things in the dish.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're struggling to hear. I'm struggling to hear you, Eric.
Because even the free education supposedly to be resumed in 1994 after elections.
All right, thank you so much, Eric,
Because
saying that the government has failed the students and this is manifesting in the violence that we see. Just your response on the force or brutal force that sometimes exerted.
I think it's very much so that's the situation. Very often you're finding that students are getting shot in the back with rubber bullets. That means they're running away. You're having possibly protests, and very often peaceful protests, that then you have this presence of police or even bouncers on the university campuses, and they come and they intimidate students, and as a result students kind of feel fearful and they'll either retaliate or there are a few elements within that take up violence, or they'll set something on fire, or there'll be issues, and then you find that the police engages, but it's in a very, very forceful manner, and students actually get injured because of that.
What are the lessons here that needs to be observed on both sides?
I think Kyle have mentioned something like that, proper planning. And as part of the training, there must be proper planning. As soon as you got a situation, you must do assessment on a situation on the part of the police and on the part of the security, a proper assessment on the situation, and then how you're going to deal with that situation and start in non-violent. It's not always going to be possible. Do not use violence against the students. Always start with negotiation, try to enter into dialogue with them, and if that's not going to work, at the end of the day, they must also know what is the level of tolerance, where is that going to stop, and then from there. But like I said in the beginning, everything must be within the legal framework.
Yeah, but why private security, though, in a public institution? The police should be adequate.
Cindy, I think, again, it comes down to manpower. When you're up against 400, 500, 1,000 protesters.
Unarmed. Okay,
fair
short
enough.
of stones.
Unarmed, but a mass group who at any time have shown in the past, and we're not just talking about the students here, we're talking about many different scenarios, can get armed within a couple of seconds by simply picking up what is a lethal weapon in the form of a brick, a bottle, a metal bar, etc. Now, although they're not deemed as firearms, those
but riot police have armor, though. They have
correct, but
means
there
of
isn't
protecting
enough.
themselves.
The country simply does not have enough policemen to be at every single riot hotspot in the country on any given day, particularly when it's a national problem like we've got here. Private security, therefore, takes the domain of the actual property. In other words, inside the campus, protecting, that is their field, not outside what happens in the street. That is the domain and should always be of your metro police, your police, and your law enforcement.
But is it the place of private security, though, considering this is a public institution, and therefore the law enforcement should be adequate from a public point of view, as in the police?
First and foremost, remember that the universities, or a business or a company, and for that matter during a strike, they have a thing called a duty of care. In other words, those lecturers, those people that are trying to go to work, and even non-protesting students in this particular case, they have a certain right to be protected from those that they feel that they could perhaps be attacked by or injured by. And therefore the university has to make a call. Do you just not bring anyone, in which case you then infringing on the rights of those who need to be protected, versus those who want to strike, which they're entitled to do, but within that group we're naive to believe that there's not going to be a violent element.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Berger, I hope we have a clearer line on you. Just the call, of course, from the national leadership and government calling for calm in this situation. It doesn't seem like there's a very quick solution in sight. What do you think are the lessons here on both sides?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. I think the line remains very, very bad. I think the problem here is that the police find themselves absolutely in the middle. This is a situation that they have not created, but there's all the expectations that they must, in the words of Minister Nzamande, they must deal with it, and they must deal with it harshly. So it's an almost impossible situation for the police to be. I think ideally we would want to see, certainly the police want to see, the university authority as well as government find a way out of this mess that should enable the police to withdraw from university campuses sooner rather than later.
All right, Dr. Berger, just stay on the line. We have Mafumbo in Cape Town. Hello to you, Mafumbo.
Yes, Mafumba, yes. Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. What's your question or perspective?
Okay, my question is, we as a student, okay? First of all, we are not the enemy of the law. All this strike that we're trying to do is for the benefit of the whole country, even the policemen that actually act violently toward us. But once this is agreed, it's for the benefit of their children. So I don't think the police should act on us in terms of like we are the enemy of the law. First of all, we do a pacific strike. We're not creating any damage, but it's toward their behavior, the way they respond toward us, and that creates a completely spontaneous action. I think the history of freedom has to come to a point where we all have to agree that when there's a command and a reasonable cause, everybody must join together.
All right, Mafumba, thanks so much. It is indeed a national imperative, but saying that having the presence of police there already sends a message that the students are the enemy. It's a hostile position that is militant, combative. Do you agree with that, Bongan?
I agree completely. I think you have a situation where students are protesting for a very legitimate cause, and the reason why they are championing this cause is because so many students are suffering and they want to engage with management, engage with government on this. And then when you get to campus to go and engage and even have a peaceful protest, you met with police, many nyalas on campus, water cannons, live ammunition, sometimes even seen visibly on police officers. And this creates intimidation and fear, and very often a protest that would have been peaceful, now students feel that they must protect themselves or that they're in a situation where it is a hostile, militarized environment.
Thanks so much, Bongane. Solar View, hello. Caller on the line, hello to you.
Hello, how are you? So Zabile and Lovo from Nelspruit.
Sawubona baba.
Ninjani?
Siyaphila sinezwaneni.
It's all right.
Yes, your comment or perspective?
I would like to applaud the police to what they did yesterday, because as far as I'm concerned, they did apply the law accordingly. It's unfortunate that because once ever people they see this thing happening, they don't look to the other side. They only look to the wrong side of the police that they are doing. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, there is nothing wrong that they have done yesterday. Because on that kind of situation, I think the necessary force was applied as it was necessary for that situation.
Babu, I mean, but do you think the dragging, the victimization, the indiscriminate level of force and directing firearms at students is necessary?
As far as I'm concerned, is that when you are a police official and in a situation like that, you need not to lower your guard. You always have to aim to the person that you are working at. Therefore, there is no way that a police official can put a firearm in their pocket and face those students who are so very arrogant to them.
All right, thank you so much.
As far as I'm concerned, as a former soldier, I know that we have to always aim to the enemy, so that when everything happened, we mustn't find one thing. You must always be ready.
So the students are the enemy in this case?
Yes, the students on the case, because at the first place, nobody's talking about those students that didn't even apply to gather like they were gathering. Because in South Africa, we've got a law that says that if you want to gather in South Africa, we have to apply for that, and there are certain processes that need to be followed. But nobody's talking about all those things.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there.
The only thing looking for is to blame the police on what they did.
All right, point taken. We have Anonymous. Thanks so much for calling. Hello?
Yes, Maria.
I'm good, sir. What's your comment or question? Anonymous?
Okay, hello, Cindy.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, ma'am. What's your question or comment?
My comment is that, Cindy, South Africa is turned to something else. It bothers me, it hurts me so much to see a full-grown...
Yeah, we seem to have lost Anonymous. I'm sorry about that. But I think it is of concern to the public or the populace that this could boil down to even the loss of lives. Carl, if you just maybe react from your reaction to some of the callers with some very angry remarks as well.
Yeah, and I think the callers all have valid points. This is not one of those situations where there's necessarily a clear line in the sand and there's a wrong and there's a right. There's situations, and I've got to say that being involved in the industry and being involved in many, over 25 years of protest action in the front line myself, I have a fairly good understanding of what takes place there. And when the media chooses to show certain things, there's no doubt that dragging people across the road, firing of rubber bullets, etc., that sells newspapers, it sells television. And that's what the media show, and I understand that. But at the same time, what we're not realizing is that a lot of that stuff is happening as a result. In other words, for every action, there's a reaction. What happened prior to that? The students, and I'll use the students in this particular case, are not necessarily always just standing in a picketing zone, predetermined beforehand, singing and chanting. They're breaking ranks. They're dividing themselves up into groups. And this is not all of them, make no mistake, but there is definitely an element. And one has to question whether, in fact, the element of those are even students. So what do you do as a university? You have to do something. Do you allow your institution to simply be burnt to the ground? Or do you make a stand? And I think that's where, in terms of Dirk and the training, comes into it. Because I'm still adamant on the fact that, even at police level, we are not adequately deploying trained personnel. And security private sector is a big problem here. Trained personnel to deal with crowds. Equipment is another issue. You make reference to live firearms. There's a difference between a rubber bullet and a live round. I haven't yet heard of a live shooting or a shooting with live rounds in this particular bout of protests. I understand that, and that's a good thing. But we are limited in terms of the equipment we can use. Tear gas, rubber bullets, water cannons is basically the go-to mechanism.
Okay, hold that thought, Kyle. Anonymous is in Gauteng. Hello to you. Thanks for holding. What's your question or comment?
Cindy, like I said, it bothers me so much to see a full-grown man seated in front of the camera, busy explaining how the students are destroying the property. While for how many years now? What is the consent? Is it the consent being the student being educated for free, or the consent is the property that is being damaged? Going back to the policemen, not all of them are there in the police situation because they wanted it. Some of them, they even drop out from the school because they couldn't manage even to pay
Anonymous, I think
education.
Point taken. Yeah, that we're missing the point. It's becoming very convoluted as opposed to looking at the issues that matter. Linda in Pretoria, hello to you. Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Hi. What's your question or comment? Linda.
Hi. Mine is more of a comment, and it's to say that firstly, I think sometimes the media creates a very distorted narrative insofar as generally these things are always a build-up. And it's not the first time that students are protesting. It's not the first time that students are complaining about these things. And so it's a latent anger that ends up, building up towards the actual strike that begins to happen. And so when students actively protest, you find that after having followed the proper protocol, following the proper measures in order to complain about certain things, that then when we begin now to exercise our rights, insofar as protesting, that we are then met with police presence. Now, I think there's a gap insofar as how the new version of student protesting is being dealt with. It's almost as though automatically, as if there is a crowd, especially if it's a black group of students, that there is always some form of violence. It may be in the form of verbal violence, in the form of physical violence, in the form of rubber bullets and things like that. So, and you find in situations, especially in Pretoria, where we have a very dynamic and diverse group of people, where people are attacked simply because of their gender, their sexuality, their race, and those kind of things.
Linda, you make such valid points. I'm afraid we're out of time. Really, really appreciate you calling in. Is there a level of discrimination? Bongani will take your reaction and Dirk very quickly in how police respond to protesters.
I don't think there's a level of discrimination. Just remember the police got a certain mandate according to the Constitution. I'm not talking on behalf of the police, I'm just talking facts. And they have to uphold the law. They have to maintain public order. But the same Constitution gives that protester the right to participate peacefully and demonstrate peacefully and all that type of stuff. So it's a difficult scenario. And the police, at the end of the day, they will have certain goals that they have to achieve. Certain goals will be no loss to life, no damage to property, no injury to people. And the same in the security environment, if there's proper planning, a proper security company that is doing that, that's got enough training, will go out, and that's the goals that they want to achieve. At the end of the day, everybody must feel satisfied with the conduct, and that's not the easy job to do, so that everybody feels satisfied with the conduct.
Thank you so much. That's Dirk Smith. He's the director at Ekurhuleni Shooting Training Academy, and Michael Bongani Reinders is from the University of Pretoria SRC, and Kyle Condon is the owner of DNK Management Consultants Global Bodyguard Solutions. And you at home, our fourth panelist, thanks indeed, as always, for calling in. Your calls are much appreciated. We take a quick ad break, and we'll see you shortly.